I had a day off to Michael Cole, and I am still pissed. I can't believe that this freaking team lost to the Utah Jazz the way that they did. I have been on social media again. You told me to get off of it, but I can't help myself, DeMichael. I was on it. I'm angry. I want to blame somebody. And that's how we're going to start this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Figuring out who to blame. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Joe Mullinax. Yes, my voice is still messed up. I'm going to go to the doctor. Relax. Everything's going to be fine. I will sound much different when you hear from me on our Monday episode, but it is a Friday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. And darn it to heck, the Memphis Grizzlies have got to win a basketball game. They have to win a basketball game. It has to be tonight. I just can't handle this anymore, DeMichael. It's got to change. Something has to change.
Careful. They told me don't call this game a must-win game. They said this
Fine.
team.
I'll call it a must-win game. It's a must-win game. Yell at me on YouTube. Too. Yell at me. Hello, I'm Joe Mullinax. You can be mad at me on YouTube. It's a must-win game for the Memphis Grizzlies. They're playing the Portland Trailblazers without their two best players. Figure it out. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at PrizePicks. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Hello to our everydayers and everybody that checks out Locked On Grizzlies each and every time they get a chance to. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can also check us out on YouTube. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all those fun things. I am Joe Mullinax of Bluff City Media, joined by my co-host, the normal-voiced, very dapper, very wonderful, Damichael Cole, the commercial appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. Damichael, I listened to the show yesterday. I didn't disagree with a word you said. Everybody in the YouTube comments, we love you. Thank you. Keep coming back. Keep talking to us. But I think we're allowed to be a little bit frustrated right now because the Grizzlies are literally the worst team in the NBA. Damichael, you have people on X talking about missing Dylan Brooks. You want to talk about short-term memory. You want to talk about not being able to remember basic things from 6 or 7 months ago. I don't care that Dylan Brooks is the best three-point shooter in the NBA percentage-wise right now. It's ridiculous. If anything, that's more of a reason to not be freaking out. And I'm freaking out not because the Grizzlies are bad, but because people are trying to say that Dylan Brooks should still be with the Grizzlies, and that's the reason they're bad.
You know, people are struggling to kind of cope with this. So they say, "Oh well, is it losing Dylan Brooks? Is it losing Tyus Jones? Is it just as simple? Is it as simple as just Ja Morant? Is it Zach Kleiman? Is it Taylor Jenkins? Like people are trying to figure out how did the Grizzlies go from 56 wins, a second 50-win season, 2 number 2 seeds in the almighty Western Conference, to a team that's 0-5 off to their worst start since 2002. I don't know what you were doing in 2002.
They were really bad.
In 2002?
Oh, no.
Learning addition and subtraction.
I was a sophomore in high school in 2002.
It's been a while. That's the point.
A long time ago.
It's been a while. To start a season 0-5 is I tell you what. People say this shouldn't be a must-win, but Portland, no. I mean, we're gonna preview the game later, but this is a game that I think the Grizzlies should really win. But to get to what we had discussed at the top of the show, who is most to blame?
I want to blame people.
I want to hear what you have to say because I'll say this: I kind of debunked the idea of blaming the defense right now because personally, I have a little bit more faith that that's going to turn around. We've seen the last 2 seasons that the Grizzlies get off the slow starts defensively, and they always end up in the top 5. So I'll be a little bit more patient on that end. The offense
between you and our old friend Sean Coleman.
Yep.
I think the two of you together, they're not going to be this bad for long, and opposing teams are not going to
shoot historically good numbers. Right. I mean, 23 of 47, 22 of 43. Like it's I can't shoot that good wide open. It's a lot of NBA players probably can't shoot that good wide open. Like
correct.
Those are some real good numbers. So at this point, it comes down to offense, coaching, front office decisions. I think those are the three areas that we have to balance here. The offense, the last 2 seasons we've had problems with it. Me and you have talked about, the half-court offense needing to improve and things like that. But right now, the transition offense isn't even great. Like, that's where the Grizzlies have been among the best, and now they're just a team. I think the first game of the season against the Pelicans, the Grizzlies had 2 transition points. That didn't happen last year. You remember the paint scoring that we were talking about? The Grizzlies just being so dominant in the paint. A couple games ago, 36 paint points for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies rarely ever are under 40, under 50 really points in the paint. 36 points in the paint, that doesn't sound right. And then there's the front office side, right? I know we talked about guys like Jake LaRavia and David Roddy getting extended playing time. But at the end of the day, they are first-round picks in their second season. So they should be getting playing time. The problem is the results with that playing time. So, Joe, who is the biggest issue for what's happening with this 0-5 star? Or is it as simple as, hey, Ja Morant's missing and he needs to, be on the floor?
I wrote about it over at Bluff City Media. The failure of this season so far is Ja Morant. This is Ja Morant's fault. Let's start with that, because he's the one guy who isn't there that should be there, right? Brandon Clark got injured. Steven Adams got injured. You've got guys banged up. They would much rather be playing than having surgery and going through rehab, right? Ja Morant made choices that led to him not being available to his team. The millions of dollars, the investment of time and treasure that have been put into him. And for him, he's basically a black hole right now, at least in terms of the on-the-court product. I'm not privy to what they do in practice, right? You know more about that than me. I am not privy to the way that his players and his teammates really feel about this situation. Maybe you know some more about that than I would as the beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there. I, as a fan, blogger, pseudo media member, whatever you want to call me, I blame Ja Morant first and foremost. And people can say, oh, well, he shouldn't have the suspension in the first place. It's this and that. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. He had a chance to appeal it, and he didn't. So he accepted the penalty. So here we are. He has the penalty. You have to deal with the ramifications of that. I like to believe that he's sitting in a hotel room, pissed off, counting down the minutes until he's able to help. That's what I'm choosing to positively believe. Is that probable? Probably not. But that's what I'm choosing to think. And I'm with you on the front office, too. Zach Kleiman, he said the quiet part out loud.
That's number one for me.
He said the quiet part out loud. He said, did we really need to quadruple down on youth? Mm-hmm. The answer is no. You did not. I think Jake LaRavia could be a good NBA player. I think David Roddy is an end of rotation, end of bench NBA player right now. This team doesn't need that. They don't need dudes that can develop into something. They need help right now. They need people that can help them win a championship now. So that, to me, is the biggest mistake. And if you want to apply the front office blame for the Morant situation, I'll listen to that. I'll listen to that too, because, and again, you would know far more about this than me. From the outside, Ja Morant is a grown man who needs to make his own decisions. But if you're somebody who's given the world as a young millionaire and you're not held accountable for things within your own organization, at some point, it's not just one dude's fault. We can say it's Ja Morant's fault, and ultimately it is.
Yeah.
But there's a level of responsibility for the people around him too.
I do think, you're onto something, but I'm going to pivot. I think it's the front office is a bigger reason for this than John Morant, and here's the reason.
That's fair. I can hear that.
Because at the end of the day, the last 2 seasons, we've seen the Grizzlies be good without John Morant. And a big reason why was because of the depth that they established. That depth is now shattered. And not from the standpoint of Steven Adams is out. Well, guess what? I remember me and you both talking about the idea of the Grizzlies potentially drafting, another center. They didn't do that. They actually traded out of the first round. I don't know what type of moves they could have made, but that guy over there in Dallas, Derek Lively, it's looking pretty decent. You go back a couple years ago, the Lakers probably screwed the Grizzlies out of that pick a little bit. But, man, imagine if a Jalen Duren would have been there. But he wasn't available for them. The point is drafting, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, 2 wing guys, after you had already drafted Zaire Williams. And virtually none of them look like, super plus players at this point. Even Zaire Williams, we can say he's shown the signs of improvement, but at the end of the day, he's taking 6-7 shots a game. His last game he shot 2 of 5.
He's a below average NBA starter.
You need him. You need him to be better. He's a top 10 pick. Let's set the bar here. You need him to be much better. So I think with those 3 picks, Zaire, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, at this point, look at Trey Murphy, right? That's in New Orleans. That's your guy. He would be shooting the peel off the ball if he was at Memphis right now. And there are so many other guys that come to mind, but I think that's kind of where they've missed on. And then I'm looking at DeAnthony Melton over there in Philly playing really good basketball for them. I'm looking at Kyle Anderson. Every night I look up, he's coming off the bench, getting 2 steals, and really just fortifying that bench that really isn't that deep in Minnesota, but it has a player like him to kind of hold the fort over there. They are 2 guys that this team is missing out. I know fit-wise, the Grizzlies wanted to emphasize shooting, and it makes sense because those 2 probably don't make, they don't shoot like Luke Kennard and Santi Aldama, but they're players that I think you definitely miss right now.
Agreed completely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation, but guess what? The Grizzlies will get a player back. Not back. They just signed Bismack Biyombo, right? Bismack Biyombo will be joining the Grizzlies soon, so we'll see what he can bring to the table. But before we talk about Bismack Biyombo, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Some of you may be late to PrizePicks. If you are late to PrizePicks at this point and you haven't been listening to us, you haven't joined PrizePicks by now, well, guess what? PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform out here in North America. It's the easiest and it's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's simple. It's just you against the numbers. No one else is involved in this. It's just you. It's the numbers. Instead of battling all these other people and pros and sharks, all you got to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And then at that point, you can just watch the money start to come in for you. You want to know what I like about PrizePicks? PrizePicks offers you a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players get injured. Look, I like playing PrizePicks with football. So for football games, a lot of players get injured. And if those players get injured, PrizePicks, if a player exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. That means PrizePicks will take that player off of your 2 to 6 player props. Nowhere else is doing that. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. How can you take advantage of that? Well, just go over to prizepicks.com right now /LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com /LockedOnNBA. Go get that first deposit match of up to $100. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about this new addition to the team, Bismack Biyombo. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am your co-host today, Damichael, joined by the one and only himself, Joe Mullinax, fighting it through. Joe was a game time decision at that. Yeah. You should know that. So we don't load manage over here on Locked On Grizzlies. So, Joe, we got to talk about this new addition. We touched on him a couple days ago a little bit. Bismack Biyombo. A lot of people are kind of hinging their hope on him as someone who can help turn this thing around. We know what he brings to the table. More as a defensive player than an offensive player. What stands out to you with this addition of Bismack Biyombo?
Yeah, the only thing that holds me out is late game starts, right? Like if it's past my bedtime, then I won't make that show. But I think that when it comes to Biyombo, the fascinating thing with him is offensively, he's not going to do much for them, right? At least in terms of
scoring wise.
What Xavier Tillman is doing offensively is basically what you can expect from Biyombo, except less 3-point attempts that airball or barely hit the rim. He'll screen. He'll do that well. He's a bigger body that is capable of being strong in that space. But he's going to be a great rebounder, and he's going to be a rim protector, not quite to Jaren's level, but a tier below it. Like, good luck when it's Biyombo and Jaren on the floor together.
I got a stat for you.
Score in the paint. I'd love to hear it.
I looked this up the other day. So per 36 minutes last year, when Jaren Jackson Jr. was Defensive Player of the Year, led the NBA in blocks per game, 3.8 blocks per 36 minutes. Bismack Biyombo last season, per 36 minutes, he played 14 minutes a game, but per 36 minutes, 3.6 blocks per game. We might be getting a block party on Beale Street, Joe.
And I think that if you're signing Biyombo, expecting him to come in and supplant Tillman, that's not going to happen. I think X remains the starter. What happens here is Biyombo comes in, and like you just said, those 14, 16, 18 minutes a game that you were splitting among other bigs, or maybe David Roddy was playing the 4, or Jake LaRavia, God forbid, was playing the 4. That is where you're going to see opportunity for Biyombo. And it's going to be really fun to watch him go out there next to Jaren. Once Santi is healthy, that's going to be the biggest thing. I think Biyombo-Santi lineups are going to be really significant. And I liked reading Bobby Marks and other people reacting to the contract to Michael. I know you noticed this as well.
Yeah.
$1 million guaranteed, but $5 million overall for Bismack Biyombo on this contract. Kenneth Lofton Jr. has 20 games left as a member of the Memphis Grizzlies, and then he's gone. That's what that told me. And then B, the way that it's structured is it, to the credit of the front office that you and I just poo-pooed all over in the first segment, the flexibility is still going to be there.
The flexibility.
If they want to make a trade, if they want to, waive him, only $1 million is guaranteed.
Right.
They have options even now that they have committed over the next 20 games and probably beyond to have Bismack Biyombo as a part of their roster.
Yeah, and what I like about the move getting Biyombo is the depth part of it. It's kind of
they needed a legitimate big.
Yeah,
they needed one.
It's huge because you can't survive playing your 2 starting guys, your starting power forward and your starting center, literally stagger pretty much the entire 48 minutes for you at center. We've seen Kenneth Lofton Jr. in a couple games just, tap the floor a little bit. But basically, you got Tillman starting at center. He comes out the game. Jaren moves over to center. And then Jaren comes out of the game. Tillman goes to center while you alternate all these other guys as a small ball 4. And it's not a good strategy because the difference here is I think with the Grizzlies, what you want to be able to do, talk about getting the most out of Jaren Jackson Jr., getting the most out of the front court. You want to put Jaren at the 5 in advantageous matchups when he has an advantage. You don't want to do it out of necessity. And right now, it's out of necessity. We've seen certain centers tend to get the best of Jaren Jackson Jr. Right now, they have no choice but to play him against those type of centers. In the past, when you play a team like the Clippers, I think he works out well, at center. But there are other matchups where he doesn't work out as well when you go against those teams that have, just incredible rebounders and things like that. But Bismack Biyombo gives you the option of now, okay, you can pretty much stagger Xavier Tillman Sr. and Bismack Biyombo, and you could throw Jaren in there for a 5-minute stretch like they probably were planning on doing before. You still can get the Santi and Jaren pairing at times, but now you have more optionality. I think it's just the depth that it adds to this team more than anything. I like the block party part of it as well. I think he gives you a little bit more as a screener than those two guys. Xavier Tillman last season averaged around 5 screen assists per game in 19 minutes. Bismack Biyombo averaged around the same number, a little bit over 5 screen assists in 14 minutes. So you get, around a similar level, probably a little bit better in that area. As we know, Bismack Biyombo is a lob threat, so he's going to really cause some attention. That's why I say offensively, he's not going to give you much in terms of off the dribble, fadeaways, and things like that. But the ability of him to kind of dive to the rim and dunk the basketball, teams are going to have to pay attention, especially when the Grizzlies have 4 guys spacing the floor, around him. I think there's some positive potential to this move. More than anything, though, I like the depth part of it.
They needed a legitimate big. And Biyombo is that.
Yeah.
At some point, it's that freaking simple, right?
Yeah.
Like, I still believe that Jaren Jackson Jr. can be a center. I don't want to see it anymore. Right now.
Not right now.
Between FIBA and now the start of this season, you have your second best player playing at a level that is beneath him. He needs to be in positions to be successful. Starting, hopefully, Friday night against the Portland Trailblazers. Hopefully tonight, Biyombo can play. If not tonight, then by Sunday we see Biyombo in the lineup, and we get not just 1 win, but 2, because we need 2, Damichael. I know we're about to break down Grizzlies right now.
They need both wins, and there's no doubt about it. And Bismack Biyombo is not listed on the injury report, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. He's been working out from what I've heard, so he should be in some decent shape going into this Grizzlies Blazers game. We'll talk about that game in a second. I got a lot of things to say, Joe. I'm sure you do as well. So stay tuned for that. But before we talk about that, got to talk about our title sponsor for today, and that's FanDuel Sportsbook, because that's where you go to make every moment more. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Look, I don't know if there's a better deal out here right now. All you have to do is win a $5 money line bet. Just go pick a team to win a game, and if that team wins that game, $150 in bonus bets goes right to you. Look, if you still haven't joined FanDuel yet, look, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. NFL, hockey, football, basketball, college basketball is about to start soon. FanDuel is where you go to take advantage of all those great opportunities. You got the spreads, you got players props, you got over-unders, and much more. I told you, I'm a big fan of the same game parlays, where you go to one game and you just package together a bunch of stats, and you can make a lot of money just by making a small bet. So look, all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now to take advantage of these opportunities. Again, I got to talk about this awesome opportunity you got right now, because new customers, you get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. Take advantage of all these great opportunities you got right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to preview the Grizzlies game, a must-win game, according to me and Joe Mullinax, against the Blazers. So stay tuned.
Must-win game.
Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer Commercial Appeal, right here in Memphis, Tennessee, joined by Bluff City Media's own Joe Mullinax. He's been doing this since I was in middle school. I like to remind him that. I mean, he takes it the wrong way. Man. He takes it the wrong way, but it's me paying homage. I think it's saying, hey, you're a vet in this thing. You've seen the Grizzlies at the grit and grind years, and you've seen them, kind of hit rock bottom, and you kind of seen them work their way back up. Like, a lot of people can't say that. I think it's paying homage. You think it's dating you, Joe, but I don't think it's that.
My hairline dates me more than anything else. But that's fair, and I appreciate it, Damichael. And we have fun here on Locked On Grizzlies. I love working with you, and we even when we're covering a team that's not so good at the moment, but thankfully they're playing a team that is not only not so good, they're also actively trying to not be so good in the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
This game makes me a little bit nervous, though, because when you look at the guys that are logging significant minutes for them, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton, Malcolm Brogdon, they have some dudes that have been significant contributors elsewhere in the past. In theory, this should be a winnable game, even for a Grizzlies team that is 0-5.
It's a little scary.
It's a little scary.
I look, Halloween's over, but this is a little tricky, and I don't know if the Grizzlies want to get this treat, because looking at this game, Malcolm Brogdon will probably start because Scoot Henderson out. You see Scoot Henderson is out, you automatically say, oh, the Blazers missing their top number 2 overall pick, dynamic point guard. Scoot, go look at the stats. Scoot Henderson has struggled so far this season.
Not doing great.
As a Grizzlies fan, honestly, if you remember, Malcolm Brogdon was 6th man of the year in NBA last season. You'd probably prefer if Scoot Henderson was starting and Malcolm Brogdon was getting limited minutes. Now you're going to get more of Malcolm Brogdon. You got to deal with DeAndre Ayton, who's had an up and down season so far. Jeremy Grant is capable of much more than he's been doing up to this point. Shaedon Sharpe has probably been the best player on that team right now. I mean, he's been good. He looks, with the athleticism that he has and the way he gets to his shot. I don't do player projections a lot, but it's giving baby Vince Carter in a way. Not saying he'll eventually reach that, but I mean,
lofty praise.
The athleticism, just look at him flying around the rim. He has the fadeaway. He has game. Point is, I still think, with all that being said, Memphis, I mean, you got Marcus Smart, who's going to be able to, he's been a dog on the perimeter, averaging over 3 steals per game. We haven't even talked much about his individual defense yet because the team struggles so much. But you got Marcus Smart, or you're going to have Desmond Bane. I mean, we're still waiting on the Luke Kennard breakout game, Joe. It's got to come at some point, right?
You would imagine. I would hope so. I worry about Luke. He's struggling.
1 of 8 in that last game.
On a much larger sample size, he obviously is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. Right. But between the shoulder injury last spring and the concussion, and maybe he's not fully there, I'm a little bit worried about that. Damichael, I'm also worried. First off, talking about FanDuel, take the under when it comes to these two offenses. The Grizzlies are currently one of the worst offenses in the NBA. So are the Portland Trailblazers. So take the under. Whatever the over-under line is in terms of the total points scored, take the under. It's something else that makes me nervous. The thing that Portland has been best at so far is offensive rebounding. 29.3% of the possible rebounds that they could grab on the offensive glass, they gather. That is good for 5th in the NBA as of this recording, according to Cleaning the Glass. As we've talked about ad nauseum, the Grizzlies are not the best rebounding team. So if Biyombo does not play, and you're still depending on Tillman and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Roddy as those front court guys, the Portland Trailblazers could get extra offensive opportunities. Every possession is going to matter in this one.
Every possession is going to matter, and that's a great point because I don't expect Portland to shoot a great percentage from the field. And in the words of Steven Adams, when you get a lot of offensive rebounds, it's because you miss a lot of shots. And that might be the case in this game. But I'm looking forward to seeing the battle of the former Celtics teammates. Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon. I think that's a big key to who wins this game. Malcolm Brogdon is a starter, in my opinion, in the NBA. You just look at the last year he played on a loaded Celtics team that had the, they were fortunate enough to bring him off the bench. And this season, he's playing on a team that, quite frankly, he's the better player. He should be starting right now. But Scoot Henderson's number 2 overall pick. You know how that goes, how this thing goes. They want to, build Scoot up throughout the season because he's the future of the franchise. So at the end of the day, Malcolm Brogdon is not Swiss cheese. This guy's got game. And I think what I've seen a lot of people say just from afar, looking at the Trailblazers, is you talk about DeAndre Ayton having an inconsistent start to this season. It's because he's not playing with the Devin Booker and the Chris Paul type playmakers anymore. They kind of feed him and give him those easy looks. And I think that's probably because Scoot Henderson is making that adjustment. So, again, that's another area where Malcolm Brogdon, not the greatest playmaker in the world, but above average for sure. Good enough to basically make me feel like this is a game you got to be careful with DeAndre Ayton in the paint. So it's definitely one. Look, I know, man. That's where we are right now. The Grizzlies should be a little bit concerned with the Portland Trailblazers post Dame Lillard. Like, that's where we are right now. But at the end of the day, all that aside, I think the Grizzlies get their first win in this game. I haven't said that yet. I was very hesitant in the last game, Joe. You got, because I just felt I felt like the Jazz could get hot from 3-point range. This is the game. I feel like Memphis has a real opportunity to get that first win.
I agree, unsurprisingly, because I'm just going to keep saying they're going to win until they actually do it. So I think they win. But this is one of those weekends, Damichael, where the NBA smartly has started putting games back to back so that teams don't have to travel as much. So if I remember correctly, they also play Portland on Sunday night, right?
They do.
So do the Grizzlies get the sweep? Do they go into Portland, win both games? And we're feeling a little bit better, 2-5 coming out of the Pacific Northwest.
I'll say this. If you win this first one, I feel much better about their chances in the second one, because if Bismack Biyombo doesn't play in this game, which I think he'll play, but if he doesn't, you'll definitely have him for the second one. And I'm just going to say this. I think you'll have Santi Aldama back on Sunday as well.
So breaking news. News.
We should see Santi Aldama.
Michael Cole. Look at that. You heard it here first on Locked On Grizzlies. Don't let other people tell you that they reported it first, because Damichael Cole, my dude from the Commercial Appeal, putting it out there. Hopefully we see Santi Aldama. He was upgraded to doubtful for Friday's game, so it makes sense the way that the Grizzlies have done injuries in the past. They're doubtful, and then they return the next one. So fingers crossed that Damichael is indeed correct on that. I'm saying they're going to be 2-5 the next time Locked On Grizzlies records. Fingers crossed. I believe. Hashtag I believe in the Grizzlies.
2-5 is definitely an improvement from 0-5. You know what?
0-7. Imagine if they're 0-7.
Look, the next time you see us, I think they'll be 2-5. I'm not going to imagine 0-7 until I just last time we saw something that bad again. It was 2002. I don't know if many of you remember Sidney Lowe. I used to hear jokes about that name as a kid in, like the first grade and stuff. I used to hear jokes about that name. I never really knew who he was, but the thing,
deep cut.
Yeah, that's a real deep cut. That team started 0-8, and he got fired, and then I think Hubie came along, and they still lost the first 5, and then Hubie got the thing rolling. But tough position to be in right now, but we'll see where they go from here.
I'm excited to watch it. I know Damichael is too. Make sure you are staying with us going into our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies, where we'll break down Blazers Grizzlies from all the different angles and obviously head into a couple of days where hopefully Memphis is able to get a practice in. Maybe we can put our coach's hat on and talk about certain things that we would be drilling if we were running a Grizzlies practice. That'll be our next episode or two of Locked On Grizzlies. But for Damichael Cole, I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Thanks to our everydayers, everybody that checks out the show each and every day on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all those fun things. Fingers crossed that the next time you see us, it's a 2-5 Memphis Grizzlies team, not an 0-7 or 1-6 one. Enjoy the games. Enjoy your weekend. Stay locked in. For Damichael, I'm Joe. This is Locked On Grizzlies.